The government of Nepal, in conjunction with external investors and stakeholders, is working to improve the quality and accessibility of higher education in Nepal in response to fast-paced globalization. While these efforts are framed as a means for improving the lives of Nepalese citizens in the current age of globalization, a dependency theory analysis reveals that these efforts may actually be exacerbating existing issues in equality and access to education. Hi, this is Tamer Kadre. Higher education in Nepal has historically been a privilege for those in the privileged classes. Public education has arrived in Nepal in force, modeled after institutes in India. However, the lack of funding and low academic standards has meant that even those who do attend may not have employable skills in a nation that is already plagued with poverty and a lack of opportunity. In recent history, the government of Nepal has begun to address these issues as best as it can, considering that the government itself has not been far removed from the instability and burden of the lagging technology infrastructure of the country. As a primarily agricultural nation, growth and development in higher education has been skewed in favor of the urban-based populations, putting at a severe disadvantage those from rural communities. Early efforts to increase access to higher education may have only widened the educational and economic gap between those who are positioned to take advantage of these efforts and those who are not. Nepal is a small landlocked nation located in South Asia. It has a unique position in being literally squished between the two giants that are China and India. It's a young democracy, having been a monarchy up until 2005-2008, when it transitioned to a multi-party democratic system. It's also very mountainous, containing 8 of the world's 10 highest peaks. With a population of 27 million people, there's a lot going on in a very small package. In 1918, Tricandria College was founded. Tricandria College was located on Nepalese soil. However, the curriculum and professors both came directly from India. Beginning in 1951, higher education continued to slowly expand in Nepal. Nepalese nationals seeking higher education have always gone to India to obtain their education. Following the model of Indian import Tricandria College, other government colleges were established, all of which were completely dependent on India. Patna University, which was founded in 1917 and was India's 7th oldest university, played a particularly large role. Testing and grading of all major examinations took place through Patna University. Only in 1959 did Nepal establish its own university with courses of study, curriculum, examinations, and results all created locally. This initial government university, named Tribhuvan University, is fully funded by the government, and all other higher education facilities in Nepal are associated with it. Civil strife, followed by civil war, were the hallmarks of Nepalese history beginning in 1992, as the country began its final turbulent transition to the modern structure of power that it has today. A Maoist insurgency was ended in 2006 after the government and the Maoists signed a peace agreement. In 2008, a constitutional assembly declared Nepal a federal democratic republic and officially abolished the monarchy. Nepal has, since then, managed to remain a democratic republic, though the young democracy is weighed down by centuries of strife and economic instability. The higher education system has remained functional during most periods of unrest due to the urban locations of most higher education institutes away from the rural areas where the insurgents have created issues. The government of Nepal and the Ministry of Education have developed several policies surrounding the issues in higher education in Nepal. These policies are in direct response to the main issues plaguing the current system, such as inefficiency and unemployability of those graduating from the public sector. Here are some of these policies. Nepal is Asia's third poorest country, with 33.9% of the population living under the poverty line of $1.25 per day. Improving access to higher education for women and the disadvantaged is an important part of creating a more mid-level technical. Improving access to higher education for women and the disadvantaged is an important part of creating more mid-level technical workers. Access to higher education is an important part of public policy. One of the continuing problems in higher education in Nepal is the substandard quality of education available on Nepalese campuses, especially the poorly funded public campuses. The government has made one of its goals to raise the quality of education available so that Nepalese workers can compete for jobs both abroad and internally in Nepal, where they often face competition from those who are educated in neighboring countries. Nepal has a generation of what is referred to as the educated unemployed. There is thought that the development of an open university system, such as the online or asynchronous systems found in many Western nations, could help improve access to and quality of education. In recent years, there has been a surge in the number of private institutes that operate in Nepal. The theory is that this gives more options to Nepalese students when they are seeking out higher education. Traditionally, a large number of Nepalese students attended colleges and universities only to pursue certificate-level programs. The development and sustaining of these programs has been thought to be a resource drain on the public universities, which are now trying to focus on the more globally transferable bachelor and master's level programs. While a system for institute evaluation has been in place since 1993, it has been resource-starved and fragmented in its role. While a system for institute evaluation has been in place since 1993, it has been resource-starved and fragmented in its role. The University Grants Commission has the dual roles of allocating government funds to schools based on need and to monitor the quality of higher education at these institutes. Historically, Nepal is unique in that it has never been invaded by foreign forces. The geography and lack of a relatively high-value, exploitable natural resource has made it unattractive to the two large countries that envelope it. This Indo-Chinese envelope has served as a shield for the country from external invasion. This has not, however, spared the country from internal political instability, something that has attracted the attention of partners in the region. There has been concern that political instability, if allowed to continue in Nepal, would have grave negative impact throughout South Asia. India and China have both looked towards Nepal with the expectation that Nepal would follow their lead in regards to both internal and external policies. With the US showing more interest in South Asia as well, Nepal could very well be the next arena of global power rivalry. This level of external interest has attracted the attention of global organizations which seek to further the interests of their sponsoring and funding nations by helping to stabilize the country through the furthering of improvements to the higher education system and process in Nepal. One of these organizations is the World Bank, which has been a continuous sponsor of initiatives in higher education in Nepal over the past 20 years. An example of one of the projects the World Bank is funding in Nepal is the Higher Education Project 2, approved in 2006, which is based on supporting existing policies that the government of Nepal is trying to implement. This particular project is for the amount of $57 million US. This significant amount, by Nepalese standards, is divided between reform grants to encourage higher education institutes to reform by becoming autonomous and accepting performance-based funding, and research funding, which is to encourage the participation of institutes in pursuing more research-based forms of education. Additionally, the World Bank is trying to create a student financial assistance program in Nepal that targets non-traditional higher education students, such as women and disadvantaged populations. This part of the World Bank efforts focuses on providing funding through grants, loans, and a work-study program that has dual benefit. Creating the opportunity for students to work allows them to earn income that they can use towards their education, and by converting non-employed students to employees, the students' creditworthiness is improved, which makes them more attractive to banks, which are then more willing to provide additional student loans to the students. Efforts to open higher education opportunities to more Nepalese citizens have been mildly successful. With 40% of the Nepalese population under the age of 17, and with the majority of Nepalese higher education students attending public colleges and universities, there has been an increased demand for the limited resources that public, state-funded institutes are able to provide. The state-funded institutes are facing the issue of cost recovery, namely, recovering part of the cost they spend on students back in some form. As a developing nation, the government is unable to keep up with the increased demands for higher education, and there has been increased effort to privatize more and more of higher education while still allowing the less privileged access through subsidized loans and grants. To look at trends in expenditure in higher education in Nepal, it's important to consider the effects of other educational initiatives in the country. There have been parallel efforts in areas of secondary and primary education. The government's main focus has been primary education through its Education for All initiative. While the government's overall education budget as a percentage of GDP has gone up from 3.3 in 2001 to 3.9 in 2006, the percentage of funds allocated to higher education have gone down from 12% to 10.6% during the same period. Tribhuvan University, the biggest university in Nepal, is supported almost entirely by the government and is the model for public higher education in Nepal. State support for Tribhuvan University has been slowly and gradually decreasing as the government tries to encourage the school to recover more of its costs through tuition fees and other sources. Change has been slow at Tribhuvan University with close to 300,000 students. The structure and bureaucracy is extremely large and inflexible. Tuition at Tribhuvan University and other public schools and colleges has traditionally been the same for all courses and areas of study. This was unrealistic and unsustainable as technical courses of study cost substantially more than business and humanities. This practice has been in the process of being changed since 1992. Organizations such as the World Bank, UNESCO, and the Nepalese government can be described as structural functionalist. This line of thought is that educational attainment and degree progression are absolute goals that lead to social stratification based on ability. The basic idea is that higher education increases employability and income and decreases inequality. This would then lead to modernization and democracy. In practice, the efforts done so far in Nepal can be said to have widened the gap between the very rich and the very poor as viewed by dependency theories. Efforts to improve access to education and quality of programs may have not reached the very bottom layers of a society with distinctly suppressed minority, ethnic, and gender groups. The caste system still prevails and influences the reforming educational layout to further strengthen its hold on society. Much of the efforts of the government and external stakeholders have focused on increasing the supply of higher education, creating openings for minority groups. However, the majority of educational institutes continue to be based in urban areas, in a nation where the majority of citizens live in rural areas. Thus, the only ones who enjoy the additional opportunities are those who are already privileged enough to live in an urban environment. Privatization of higher education is one of the major initiatives undertaken by the government of Nepal. In theory, this is leading to the reduction of the economic burden of having to support public institutes. In practice, public institutes continue to be underfunded. Tuition at private institutes is very high and is out of the reach of most families. The quality of the education received is as different as the tuition cost, with quality at private schools being much higher. This leads to a widening of the education gap between the rich and poor, with the poor often containing the least privileged members of society. As Nepal moves towards a private higher education model, it's important to be careful about embracing too quickly the US-based student loan model. Improving access to educational loans is a double-edged sword that swings in all directions. This is especially true in a country that has high unemployment rates and an uncertain economic and political future. A large proportion of the solutions to the higher education problem in Nepal seem to be based on fixing certain aspects of Nepalese culture and society. This seems to be based on the assumption that there is a wrong way and a right way to live through life. The goals of higher education are often focused on selling a Western lifestyle as the correct way of life, while much of what is indigenous to Nepal and the region is considered to be backwards or oppressive. Urban life is sold as being better than rural life. Leaving life in extended families to live in smaller families is seen as a positive thing, and marriage and childbirth at a young age are to be discouraged because they are detrimental to health and prosperity and repressive to women. Higher education is sold as a tool for wealth accumulation. Dependency theories would see all of this as fattening the cow so it can be milked. A Western education and consumerist lifestyle creates the perfect opportunity to create a new market for goods and thoughts. China, India, and the US would gladly sell a modernized Nepal that discards tradition anything that they can make it think it needs, including education. It must not be forgotten that a Western higher education system will make Nepal a better global consumer for the nations that fund the World Bank and most others investing in Nepalese education. Thank you for your time.